Sorry for not recording, and now recording is in progress. And okay, now we can move on to the second project, which will be the Amazon Biofoundry, a project about biodiversity too. So very happy to see this topic. So the floor is all yours, guys.
Hello, we are the Symbio Amazonas, and we're going to talk about our project, the Amazon Biofoundry. We're going to present our pitch about the establishment of a biofoundry in the Amazon rainforest. Next. Thanks, Zabeli. So I think since the last project, we all know that the biodiversity of a whole planet is concentrated of 10% here in the Amazon part of Brazil. And we have like protected and endangered flora and fauna. And our rivers like discharge 16 to 15% in the ocean. But our rivers not only stay on the ground, we also have flying rivers. Next. And these rivers, they contribute to distribution of rainfall around the continent. Not only our country, but a lot of countries that have borders with Brazil depend on these flying rivers to generate rainfall on their land. You can pass now. Okay, so climate change is no news to anyone here, but this year it's a special occasion because we had the highest level of water in Rio Negro here in Manaus, and it surpassed the year of 2012. We also have been seeing a lot of drought periods here, and in the south part of the Amazon, we've been seeing a lot of fires, and which endangers this biodiversity here. You can pass now. And thank you.
So as you can see on the map below, the red dots represent intentional fires that basically are done, for example, to harvest wood. So when we look to all that economic active in Brazil, and especially in the north of Brazil, people just harvest and do extractivism that leads to forest destruction, especially on that region of the south of the Amazon rainforest going to the north. So there are some small groups like our, for example, that do the bioprospecting, but we really think that strategy should be the main way to interact with the life from the forest through a sustainable way to develop bioproducts. So, so as you can see on the next slide, we thought about how we could do that through, for example, genome mining. So the first point of our strategy should be do a logical guess. For example, which places of the Amazon rainforest may have some cool enzymes that have evolved in all that biodiversity, and we could apply, for example, for the diagnostic of tropical diseases or to apply for industrial applications. And by saying genome mining through that bioprospecting, this is a strategy that we would like to do because we already do the classical bioprospecting, like for example, bioassays. But one thing that we noticed is that we lost almost all the biodiversity that contains in the samples that we extract. So we were thinking, what types of enzymes we are losing by not sequencing out this biodiversity and basically synthesizing the sequences of genes that been found and go to characterize that. So we think that it is really important to implement a biofoundry that would allow the high throughput screening and characterization of new enzymes directly from the biodiversity that we have assessed. So as you can see on the next slide, we have access to a really privileged environment here without this forest. So we are thinking about using automation and many bioreactors for doing that. So for example, sequencing, synthesizing, and testing the enzymes that we found. And one of the things that we are thinking were, for example, using bioinformatics to analyze all the sequences that we find and compare through alignment of, for example, industrial enzymes to improve the way that we do bioprospecting or sequencing bioprospecting. So basically, this is the overall idea of our project right now.
Thank you, Jamie and Zainab. So do we have comments, compliments, questions?
Yes, I have many thoughts and questions. Beautiful idea, and I'm wondering, what sorts of sequencing resources do you have at your disposal currently? Do you have instruments for Sanger sequencing, for Illumina sequencing, for nanopore sequencing? What are your capacities currently?
We do have like not just one lab. We have obviously a build that we call multidisciplinary center, like with cloning labs, fermentation labs, and a lab for metagenomics. So we do have our laboratory with sequences, but currently the problem that we are facing is like the increasing of dollar. So it's really expensive to like keep the lab working. But this is the daily thing, like we have to deal with that as scientists. The thing about the biofoundry would, for example, automating all the process. So for example, we are like pipetting all day, and we have a really giant biodiversity to assess, and it is basically impossible to assess that by pipetting and by going to the forest, collecting small samples and sequencing that and waiting the sequences. So we were thinking how we could improving the access of all those informations and giving that to the community, like bioinformatics is already the world collaborating with scientists in the Amazon rainforest to work together to build a better world using that biodiversity.
Yeah, that kind of leads into my second question, which is, as a sort of biotech center at the beating heart of the living systems of the world, you guys are pretty well placed to start thinking about biology and biotechnology more expansively than than most. I think about the things you're doing with bioprospecting and trying to do microbial engineering as that's the sort of biology at the molecular biotechnology at the molecular and the cellular scale, but you're surrounded by this biology at the sort of ecological scale. And I'm wondering, is there opportunity to like form connections and partnerships with the organizations and the people around you who are working with biology at that ecological scale, like the indigenous peoples nearby who are sort of protecting the forest and like, yeah, biology at all scales and sort of holistically. What are your thoughts on that?
So if we have openness for collaboration is that the question?
Yeah, and you know, not just collaboration, but like, you know, solidarity. Like, you know, do you talk to, you know, people beyond just like the, you know, the scientists in the labs? Do they talk and connect to like the people who are protecting the forest? And
Yeah. That's a really good point. There is a map. I don't have that map right now, but it's basically a map that it's the distribution of indigenous groups and the preservation of the forest. And one thing that we can clearly see through that map is that the regions where the indigenous people are located are the most preserved regions. And this is a very funny information because people usually say, oh, but the forest is being destroyed by the indigenous people. This is something that we heard people say in Brazil, which is not a true thing. So we think that it's a very connected point to establish a sustainable way to develop new products and keep the forest preserved. And the forest is basically the home of those people, and we are basically the descendant of those people here. So we do think it's very important to keep such a communication pathway with those people because this is what we call here ancient knowledge. So, for example, we have one drinking that you need to cook for 7 days to be able to eat. If you don't cook it for 7 days, you basically be dead. And and we know that because this is ancient knowledge. So we not have assessed any of those groups, but I think this is a really good point where what kind of things we could learn by assessing those peoples and build ways to connect and research. Talking more about collaborations overall, I think this would be something very important because we do those bioprospectings through bioscience, but we do not know yet how to do genome mine. And we are researching in the literature, and there are like small drops. Imagine that there are this ocean of bioprospecting, and the people that use genome mine, specifically in Brazil, are small drops. It's a very non-used strategy here. So we are basically looking where are those people that use that technology, and we could learn with those people.
Yes,
I'd like to comment one thing. Guilherme, you could be first. Actually,
yeah, I'd like to add a comment. I don't know if this breaks the protocol, but this is a subject that I'm very interested into. So, the biodiversity law of 2015 it changed a lot of the game of doing research with biodiversity in Brazil because, as Jimmy said, it recognized traditional knowledge. So nowadays, if you develop anything based on traditional knowledge, you pay some royalties to that community, which is a great way to sustain those traditional communities and to foster biodiversity conservation because they need to take care of the environment, the biodiversity, so we can generate products from this. We have over 200 traditional communities in Brazil, which is funny. It's funny. There are over 170 languages in Brazil. Most people, I have no idea what are those languages, but this is quite interesting. So from those 200 communities, over 200 communities, around 100 of them were cataloged. Like their traditional knowledge was studied through the decades, and this is organized. For another 100 of them, this is nowhere. So this is a pressing issue. Like to catalog this knowledge, to organize this knowledge. So this can foster the biotech ecosystem, and this then can sustain those communities and they can develop as well. So yeah, this is basically the legal framework. Recently, we joined the Nagoya Protocol. So nowadays, according the Brazilian legislation has a framework that I'll talk a little bit, but basically, overall, we can access the traditional knowledge, and this can be shared because of the Nagoya Protocol with anyone in the world. This is the overall legal framework nowadays. The problem is that our legislation doesn't talk about traditional knowledge from other people. So what happens if a Brazilian company steals traditional knowledge from a Bolivian community? We don't know. This is so we need to update our law. But this is the overall the law framework for this.
Fantastic. Yeah, that sounds like a really good starting place. And you know, I just say I do think that in my mind, one gap that is missing is, you know, all the people around the world working on biology at the molecular and the cellular scale, trying to build a good future with those tools. They need to get in communication and start building solidarity and building community with the people who are working with biology at the ecological scale, and particularly the indigenous peoples around the world. So good stuff there.
I think. Sorry, I think one of our problems is because our state, Amazonas, is like country-sized. You know, it's very big, so it's hard for us to do research here. And like when we were reading their article, they worked in a lake called Paraqué, and it's very far from our city. Like when they say, oh, it's close to Barcelos, that it's another municipality, we're like, okay, so it's far. And it's in an island, in a piece of land inside the river. So try to figure it out, you know. So it's very difficult for us to do research here also because it's very big. And sometimes these indigenous people, like they don't talk with another ethnic because they have rivalries between them. Here in Amazonas, it's very common for us to see like one ethnic doesn't talk to the other because technically they are bigger than the other one. So it's very delicate subject here.
Yeah, I think that it's a very good point from Isaac Larkin about the collaborations. Like for example, that paper, there only one paper that we found with genomic mining inside the Amazon rainforest is from an institute from São Paulo that is a state 1,000 kilometers away from Amazonas. And there are 4 institutions from São Paulo in the paper. And in any moment, there is a direct collaboration with an institute or a researcher from the state of Amazonas. So even inside the country, we are missing the collaboration points, like about how we could build better things if everyone was just collaborating and not just taking things. And I think this comes maybe from the way that we do things in academy. Like for example, no, I need to do that first. I need to publish that first. I need to be the one that is going to change the world, and it's only me and only my research group, you know. So I think this is a very good point about we are missing the collaboration.
Oh, I have something to say, but I know Giovanna has her hand up nicely, so.
I just want to comment on the connecting different people to work together, collaborate, and then we can move on this point. But it's just to say that in like 4 years ago, the project, I'm from Simbio, Amazonas. This is where I grew up as a scientist, where I was born as a scientist there. So my first iGEM was with Simbio, Amazonas. And the first project that I participated in synthetic biology was actually a project that was basically built from collaboration. So I know that we have a lot of gaps and a lot of bridges to build together, but this particular project was requested almost from regulatory agency because they found out there was a high amount of mercury contamination because of mining, gold mining on the state, and they heard about genetic engineering, and then they thought, okay, there's people playing with genetic engineering. Let's call these people because there's something called bioremediation. Is that the word in English? Yeah. And
Bioremediation, yeah.
bioremediation, okay. And then we built the project based on their request, and it was a regulatory agency. So there is communication, and when this happens, it's really, really good for all the community. Just to finish, we end up in this project creating actual public civil action with lawyers and the regulatory agency that worked with us. So, and there's still people working on that, on the legal part. So, yeah, I agree 100%. We need to connect those ecosystems to work together. Okay, Sarah, you can talk.
I finally figured out how to do the raise hand. I don't know how to put it down probably, but yeah, so this is like super interesting to me and things that I study actually in terms of regulatory things and even like biosafety and bioethics kind of things playing in with this. And it's I'm wondering if you could share that article. I don't know, where did you go, Jimmy, that you were talking about?
I
And
can
also
share. I can share with you. I will put it on the chat.
Thank you. And then Giovanna, do you have a link to the project you're talking about at all? I work closely with a group of people who are actually, I don't get big grants and things because I have a small community bio lab, but I work with people who can get such grants and things, and I'm wondering if we might be able to kind of collaborate on that idea to bring all of these different knowledges from 160 or whatever. What would you call these? Not people groups, or what would you call these 160 groups you're talking about?
Indigenous nations.
Indigenous nations, would that be proper?
In Brazil, we call it tribes, actually.
Tribes, indigenous tribes or just tribes?
Indigenous tribes.
Okay, I think it's really, really interesting. So I just wanted to throw that out. Thank you for the links and me reading those.
I will make a fast comment about this, is that we have organizations in Brazil, in Manaus, actually, the city that you live, that receive money from the United Nations. I think it was $1 billion through a lot of years to make sustainable work with some tribes in Manaus and in Amazonas, in the Amazon rainforest. And they actually have some partnerships that produce some local product. I think one of the products are indigenous chocolate with cacao, that one species of cacao that it's only produced by one specific indigenous group. And a lot of international chefs buy 100 of these chocolates, and this actually was converted using this institute to these groups, indigenous groups, actually. So I think we'll be also interested to talk with them about how this legal process actually works, so we could actually have these partnerships and make metagenomicas with the supervision of these groups, and they could help you with getting some specific points of rich biodiversity that only then can reach, and making this work much more collaboratively with them, actually. So I really recommend you to talk with them. I know right now that the institution is dying because the United Nations actually cut this money because of the last political movements that we have in Brazil. But I think after the next election process, this will be recovered, and this institution will not die, and things will continue. Okay.
I remember last year I talked with like it is, I think it's the vigilant of the tower from the Amazon Museum, and they receive international funding for protecting that area in 2014, I think. But then they stopped to receive that funding because basically because of a current government, the institutions that were giving the money didn't want to be related to the current federal government. So it was a problem because the connection was done through the federal part of the executive and not directly with the institution. But I think it's a really good point, is Isaac. Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah, so one of my collaborators also sits on a United Nations board for biotech. So I don't know. I'm just hearing about this for the first time, but I'm thinking like, what can we do to help gather all of this knowledge from these different indigenous tribes?
We can send you our email and we can like stay in touch after this.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Oh,
Put mine
great.
in.
Isaac Larky, you send the link to comment on the.
Yes. I got just two more things I want to say. The first one before the link is, I think, when thinking about these partnerships, these potential collaborations and connections with the indigenous communities, it's also important to think about, what they would need, and how can you make it, how can you be in solidarity with them as they're helping you with like bioprospecting and things like that. So like, how can you have a collaboration where you mentioned the thing about like, can we measure mercury contamination from mining in their community, or can we document or help prevent slash and burn agriculture, or the destruction of their of the ecosystems that they steward. I think that sort of how can we form these connections that benefit each other and that reinforce each other is very good. And then so the link that I sent is so Oxford Nanopore, which is the company that makes nanopore DNA sequencers and RNA sequencers. They have a pilot program aimed at documenting and preserving sort of ecological diversity. And I believe the way the program works is if you like propose to them a project to sequence the genomes or the metagenomes of biodiverse areas, endangered species, these types of things, they will send you the reagents and equipment required to do nanopore sequencing for free. So that might be a thing for you guys to look into, because you might be able to leverage it.
So Isaac, what
Thank
you put in was a Gmail link. Is that what you meant to put as an email?
No,
No, he sent the link. It's
yeah,
above
link that I just posted.
the
Oh.
other ones.
But I saw Synbio Amazonas. Okay, that's you guys' contact email then. Okay, got it. I see.
Yes, yeah. So
Okay.
this is the link that I sent. It's the
Okay.
supporting lots of
Which is just
biodiversity.
amazing.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I would love it if you guys got free nanopore sequencers
Yeah.
and flow cells and equipment.
We would love it too.
Yes, register your interest there.
Okay. Good discussion session, everybody. Thank you. Do we have any more questions, comments? Oop, yes, no? Oh, Devin, yeah.
Yeah, hi. These are both really great talks, and I just want to echo a lot of the sentiments that were already said in terms of collaborating with indigenous tribes. I actually have one of my colleagues where I teach runs a course where he goes down to the Amazon. He works with some indigenous people and does sort of more traditional, I guess, bioprospecting. So just taking plant extracts and trying to do some biochemistry on them. And one of the things he's found has been a real sort of skepticism by the indigenous tribes, or sort of a real sort of worry that they're going to face some sort of exploitation, that they don't want to just have
Yeah, of course.
resources taken from them
Yeah.
and then developed without them. So I think it's great that you're sort of thinking about this. I had a question, if you could flesh out a little bit more in terms of, you're going to use maybe some knowledge from the indigenous people in terms of the sort of logical guess you said of what kind of activities might be in those species. How might you go about identifying what enzymes to produce? I mean, just looking for what's most novel, or taking a guess in terms of enzyme activity? Just curious how you would go about doing that.
The first thing that we thought was like, well, let's just sequence everything, but obviously we can't sequence everything. So we went to the point of doing the logical guess. So right now there is a place that we thought it would be interesting. It's I don't remember exactly the name. I think it's Poço do Maranhão. It's basically a thermal lake very close to our city. And I didn't knew that we have thermal lakes in Brazil. So it was a cool thing. So we were thinking like we maybe, for example, find new polymerase in such environment. So our first enzyme that we have in mind was just to go to these thermal waters in Amazonas and sequence and align with, for example, polymerases that we already know the sequence, and to see if we can find something that maybe it's better, maybe it simplifies the sequence of DNA faster. We don't know because we haven't went there yet. So that's because we want to go there. So this is one thing that we have in mind. That paper that we are talking, that beta glucosidase, it's an enzyme that it's useful like for ethanol production. But right now we are more focused in things that are more emergent, like diagnosis and things like that.
I would like to also point out some things that I forget the name of the library, but in CBI have a tool that you could assembly genomics for only downloading the fragments that you sequence. And basically one of the features that they have is that they try to annotate your genome, and by doing this they actually have some specific proteins that they try to find that are important for industry in general. And this could be one for stuff. The other thing is that we could also try to select new interesting properties for synthetic biology, like DNA polymerases, RNA polymerases, that could be useful. And basically what we could do is taking all DNA polymerases and generating hammer hidden Markov model of these enzymes, and search through your genome of interest. And the last part that it's one of my interests in the last, I don't know, years, is that right now we have one interesting tool that AlphaFold makes, is that you could have a protein sequence and you could generate the 3D structure of this enzyme with high reliability. And one thing that we also could find is taking all these enzymes that are interesting for the industry and try to find some proteins that are related on not by sequence, by the 3D structure, using superposition algorithms. And basically what this is another way to screen proteins of interest that you could find. One project that I have for the last years is trying to get a lot of a lot of databases, genomes of metagenome in the Amazon, and try to use this as an example of how diverse and how rich these metagenomes are for industry, and try to show to people that actually we could use the Amazon rainforest not only for carbon neutrality, but you could also use the Amazon rainforest as a resource for industry, chemical industry, and the fermentation industry, and synthetic biology also. Yeah.
Okay. Any more comments?
I'm just typing some comments in case it's interesting for anybody.
I think we also have the Unicamp project.